Hey everyone, welcome back to Two Drink Minimum, a podcast where we talk about various life topics over 2 beers at minimum. We are your hosts. I'm Janet.
And I'm Edwin.
And today we are talking about providing you guys a single survival guide, which is essentially going to look at, how to deal with being single in like a good, healthy way, pretty much. And today we are drinking
Left Hand Milk Stout from... Left Hand Brewing Company Milk Stout Nitro. So here, nice little look at it. I just realized I kind of would say Left Hand Milk Stout, which I think is the way they would brand it, but it also has the brand of the beer. It's actually kind of interesting when I think about it. Some beers I give the whole name, like Miller Lite, it got it in the name, and this one is kind of, they put the Milk Stout big, but then Left Hand Brewing's on top, but I kind of just say it all. So
I always say Left Hand Milk Stout too.
Yeah. But I can totally see someone looking at this saying, oh, it's called Milk Stout Nitro.
But right? They also have, or someone thinking it's called Nitro, and Milk Stout is the type of beer.
Yeah, so all right, so let's open up these bad boys, and then we can talk a little bit about...
It's weird that you didn't pass me mine. You just gonna open mine for me.
Sure, dog. Here you go.
All right, thanks.
What's up, bro?
It's nice and cold.
Today.
Oh, you had these in the freezer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Today is the Love Cast. Sit back, get comfortable, and get ready to fall deep in the love.
Maybe I'll play some George Michaels.
Let me tell you the things I've never told you in ways I've never said them before.
I regret not showing everyone this pour more.
Well, we can't play the music or else, it would be...
Copyright infringement.
Yeah. But me humming,
I love how you can
YouTube's not going to catch that.
Dump this out.
Yeah, I should have dumped it out better. Mine sucks. But
and I also should have showed you guys...
I'll dump it out next time
for watching on the video.
Beer. So, it is our Love Cast. That's what we're doing today.
What does the beer taste like?
Let's find out.
It's not. It tastes like love.
No, it's kind of dark. But you know what? Today, this is a survival.
Love is dark.
Love is dark. It's bitter. It'll leave you bitter, cold, and alone, questioning your value. So, what we're going to do is help you understand that you do have value. You are valuable. You deserve to be loved. You will be loved. You have been loved. Well, at least you thought you were.
Maroon 5.
Oh!
So, as Maroon 5 said,
she will be loved. So, yeah. So, we're going to start right here. Now that we've had a little bit of Left Hand Milk Stout, and it tastes delicious. It's a dark beer. Best way I can describe it to someone who's never tasted it, it's like a better version of Guinness, in my opinion. Not that Guinness is bad, but a better version to me. So, think of a dark beer, something like that, kind of chocolatey, if that sounds like something you're like, ooh, then great. If you're a person who really hates dark beer, it probably is one you should stay away from.
It's also, actually, I disagree. I didn't originally like dark beer. This is one of the first dark beers I liked because,
well, for some reason, whenever I mention dark beer and, like, dark chocolate, some people are just like, I don't have no interest. Yeah, so that's what I mean by that,
Right, but, I'm trying to think what I like
think
about
it's
this
good,
more.
but...
I feel like I like this one a bit more because it's not... It still has kind of, like, that dark chocolate bitterness to it, but it's not quite as bitter as other dark beers, and I think that has to do with the fact that it's a nitro, which nitro basically just means it's like it's either brewed and or packaged differently, because they also have a milk stout and then they have a nitro milk stout.
That one tastes way more milky.
And the nitro one has more of a balanced profile. So I like this one a lot.
I really love this beer, but I'm just saying a lot of people who are very negative on the dark beer, so I'm like, well, then, don't try it if you're already like, super negative, but if you're not, it's all good.
Before we get into our topic at hand, they're part of the Colorado Brewers Guild. Left Hand Brewing Company. And they describe this beer as super smooth with soft roastiness and mocha. 6% alcohol. Pour at 40 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Drink at 50 to 55. I guess they want you to wait a little bit. And they recommend that you do a hard pour. Ingredients. Rocky Mountain water.
Janet, come on.
Malted barley. Lactose. Flaked oats, hops, and yeast. Yummy. Yeah, that mocha taste is really what it does for me. And what? I want to talk about what it tastes like.
I want to talk about love. So, love. What's love have to do with this?
Today we're going to try to get as many cliches on love as possible. But I think, kind of connecting those things, I feel like the reason there's so much, like, cliche, dweeby songs and all this stuff about it is because it's such a universal thing that people experience. Not just having love, but like the want of love, the heartbreak of love, the highs of love. Like, it's a very like common human experience, and that's why it's written about so often in media, etc., etc. So our topic at hand once again is how to have a healthy mindset / approach to being single. So like, how to be good about it, but then also how to what actions to kind of take if you are single.
Right, but before we really get into that, we need to tell people about our relationship with love. So, real quick on me, I've been in a relationship for just about 10 years. It'll be 10 years, maybe at the airing of this podcast or days before. So I'm gonna hit 10 years in mid-February. So I've been not single for pretty much my entire 20s, which I know for some people it's like saying, you can fly or something. It's like, what? How's that possible? But yeah, I started dating my current girlfriend when I was 20, and I am now 30. I'm 30. So it's been the whole 20s just a ride with her, and I've been
oh my
dating
god,
her
you gave away your 20s to be with one person?
Yep. So that's been my situation. Obviously before that I was single, and I dated a good amount during my high school years and all that. But yeah, for 20 to 30, it's been the same person. How about yourself?
I am single and stress-free. No, okay, I'm joking. Okay.
Very stressed.
I'm actually not doing too bad these days. It's been decent. But yeah, I'm single. I've been pretty much single for most of my life. I mean, my longest relationship was like a year, maybe a little bit more. And that was like a high school going to college relationship. Other than that, my next like long relationship was maybe like 6-7 months, about a year ago. And then I kind of like sort of saw this guy in college, and that was maybe like, I don't know, a couple months. It doesn't really count as a relationship because it was never actually a relationship, but there was like a thing there. So those are kind of like my big like relationship pillars.
And how old are you now?
I'm 25.
Okay, so we got a 25 and a 30.
And then some little dates.
One person with 10 plus like years of hardcore experience, and another person with, what would we say? You'd start at like 16, like 9 years of softcore experience.
Yeah, that sounds really weird.
Yeah, of on again, off again, looking for love experience.
Yeah, though I've been, like most people, even though they don't like count these relationships, because when you're like a baby, it doesn't really count. But like, yeah, I had my first boyfriend when I was in 8th grade, and I dated since then. And for me, I would say I really started like dating is more of like a regular person or adult, like outside the context of like, this is the boy from my science class.
Post-college,
even when you're like 21 years old, it's like, this is still the boy from my science class. It's not really like the same. So I started like actually trying to date after college when I was like 22 or 23.
That's not bad. So you got like 2 years.
I would say like I've really been like on it for like 2 years.
2 or 3 years you've been out there.
2 or 3 years.
You've been an adult dating.
Yeah, not just like boy.
Yeah, an adult. Just flat out, not disputed. No dispute anyone can make. You're an adult dating.
Yep.
You're working. You live in the city. Not because you're going to school. You're working in the city. You got your life.
As my profile says. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're looking for love in the places.
Yeah. Right. So.
All right. So this is a single survival guide. That's where the two of us come from. Hopefully, one of our stories, hopefully both of our stories resonate with you, but maybe one of us does more. Maybe you look at me and you say, hey, that's the expert. Like, he knows everything. Or maybe you say, hey, actually, Jen is the expert because she knows exactly what I'm going through on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, because I'm also just like her looking. Or maybe you just like my story better because you're like, well, that's my ultimate goal. So maybe the person who's actually achieved that can help me achieve that. And, me and Jen especially... We like the fact that it's just a coincidence, obviously, that we kind of balance out that way. But it's because a lot of people kind of, especially with the single issue, it's a sensitive topic for a lot of people. Just like, health can be, like a lot of the topics we actually talk about, people get kind of sensitive when you talk about, hey, are you accomplishing your goals? Are you actually working out? Like a lot of things we talk about, people definitely, no one wants to get exposed or like some people, I guess, don't like to kind of get called out on stuff. And the love thing is another one where you can totally get called out on because I think a lot of times...
I get this enough from my family.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanksgiving.
People kind of feel weird about being single. Our society still, it's expected at some point you should be with someone. Like, what's wrong with you, So there's still that pressure even if you're trying not to or say you're okay. So hopefully instead of maybe looking at us as two other people who are like trying to be like, well, are you married? All that stuff. Maybe you can think of it, hey, these two people are just trying to kind of help me out through it and be my best self while single, and then maybe ultimately, hopefully,
so we've all been single. It's
yeah, 100%. Maybe we can ultimately get to your end goal, which is to be happy in a loving life and having a wonderful family, which I think everyone kind of wants, at least a good family, right? So, yeah, and one thing that definitely annoys me about this whole thing is whenever I mention it, a lot of times people do kind of dismiss my experience because they're like, well, you don't know, like you've been out of the game, but actually I'm playing the game with the most extreme level every single day. It's kind of weird. I was thinking about it on my drive home today before we did the podcast. I'm like, now I'm not saying the Michael Jordan of love, but it's kind of like telling Michael Jordan, yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
It's kind of like telling Michael Jordan, what do you know about playing in the NBA now? You haven't played in 10 years.
I would definitely swipe left
Yeah.
on that profile.
Michael Jordan
of love.
you should have looked into the anyway. So yeah, so it's kind of like, again, I'm not the Michael Jordan, but since I've been doing it so long, it's like the same thing. Like, yeah, you're right. I haven't been out there this week, but you know what? I've done what everyone else is aspiring to do. I'm still doing, and I'm doing it at like the ultimate level. Living with my girlfriend 10 years, living with her for like 5 years, like through thick and thin. Like, isn't that what you want?
More than 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But isn't that what you
7 or
want?
8.
So why would you just dismiss? Now, granted, yeah, just like the Jordan thing, he doesn't know the new NBA, the coaching, the new team. Yeah, there's a couple things you can probably not. He's not the best person to
So
ask.
you keep saying you're not the Jordan of love, yet you keep comparing yourself to Michael Jordan.
Yeah,
so.
there's some things for sure. I may
I
not
don't
be
know.
the expert on Bumble and stuff, but that's why we have Jenny here. But I'm the expert in a lot of the other things that really matter. That even if you're using Bumble or something, you're gonna need to know how to deal with people at that level. And then
Bumble, please sponsor
and
us.
sometimes Janet gets the opposite. They're like, "Oh, you're single. What do you know? You're just like me. So how can you give me advice?" And then that person really annoys me because, like, well, you won't take advice from the person who's in a long-term relationship.
Uh-huh.
You won't take advice from someone who's in your situation as well. So basically, who's the person you're going to respect and
no
listen
one,
to?
because I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. So hopefully, us calling that out if your head's there will kind of be like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, they got a point. Or hopefully one of us you already relate to, and you can just maybe take our word a little more than the other person's word.
But Edwin, what if I'm fine being single? What if I don't want to find love? I'm good right now. I'm just hanging out, living my life.
Okay, so you're good right now, right?
Yeah.
What would make you not good?
I don't know, but I'm fine. So
Okay,
then,
so you're
so
good.
then what would you say to someone that has that mindset? That's not me. I'm just speaking.
No,
for
100%.
The audience.
Well, I would say if
that
you
could
think
be
you're
here.
good right now, the problem with that is that I haven't met a person long term. And when I mean long term, there's something you gotta remember about love and life. It's really long. If you're 35, good chance every minute of your life now you could double it and add, and that was probably how long you have left. So really think about, do you think your answer at 35 is going to be the same at 74? And I'm willing to bet my life that it won't be. And I'm pretty sure deep down inside you'll bet your life too. Because I haven't met that person who's like, you know what? I'm only 35, so I've been around for 15 years. The next 45 years, this answer will not hurt anymore. When my family's dying, when I bury my parents, when all my cousins and nephews and everything get their families, and eventually the family that was my core has moved on because they have their own families and they cannot prioritize the crazy uncle, and I'm in my solo apartment because everyone else is left, and I didn't build my own community and my own family with my love. Come talk to me and let me know how the single life feels, when you're eating a Hungry Man meal by yourself on Thanksgiving because you didn't feel comfortable asking your cousin and his family. You didn't want to make the drive to Ohio to be with their family and be the odd person out, kind of intruding. And your parents are gone, and you don't have anyone, and all your friends have also moved on and done their own thing, and you're not there. And let me know if that was okay to you. And are you gonna wait for that to happen? And it's maybe too late because now you're 53, and if you're a woman, maybe some of the goals that now that you really have a yearning for, you cannot do. If you're a guy, maybe you still like, well, I'm still the same thing. I want to date someone my age, and they got their baggage. They already did the things, and I missed out on all the experiences. I missed out on the marriages. I missed out on seeing a child walk. I missed on seeing my son and daughter who never existed. I missed those aspects.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 54. How am I gonna meet someone who doesn't have that baggage, who's kind of like me? How are we gonna build a home when we're so old now and there's not enough money for mortgages and stuff, and they have maybe other priorities? It starts to become, that process starts there. So
It's lots to think about.
yeah. And what's more likely true, that you're gonna be okay 40 years from now, or that maybe it's not eating you alive,
Yeah.
but do you want to wait for it to?
I have the same sentiment. And we talked about this before. We sat down to record, but yeah, that was actually my mindset going into into figuring it out with like realizing I did want a relationship and then kind of deciding to go for trying to have a relationship. Because for me, I'm like, well, I don't want to wait until I am desperate. And then I'm like, now is the time to start looking, you know? I think the other thing with like the whole like, oh, I don't want a relationship right now is a lot of people say like, I mean, I'm sure some people will say, like, oh, you know, oh, I'm the bachelor life for life, dog, you know, or whatever. But most people say, oh, I'm not really looking for anyone. But, you know, if someone comes along and they kind of, and I think the fact that, like, if you're okay with someone coming along, that just means you're, like, too lazy to find them yourself. Or you don't want, either too lazy or there's, like, insecurities there that are maybe stopping you from pursuing the relationship. Because, of course, we always use the excuse of time, right? Where it's like, oh, I don't have the time to do it. So, like, if, you know, the perfect person just happens to meet me where I'm not outside because I'm always working or doing whatever I'm doing, or I'm always out with my friends, so I'm never alone for anyone to approach me. If they somehow, yeah, sure, I'm not going to stop love from entering my life. But then, you know, if you are okay with it being in your life and you kind of low-key want it, then you should do something to pursue that.
So if kind of someone's being that skeptical, I would say really think about it. Think about what I said. Think about that. Think about you at 75. Really think, do you honestly believe that's you? When everyone you love is dead, no one's around, you live in an apartment by yourself. Is that really? And it doesn't matter how busy, you're so busy with that job, you won't have that job anymore. I don't even know what the job is. I can tell you it's not going to exist, you know? And your life experiences, like really think about that. Because I've met some people, you know, I'm not going to call people's names even though I don't think they watch this, but I've had family members like that, and they were pretty good for a while, and they're old like that, like 35, 42, 47, but at a certain point, it happens with all of them. They finally broke down, and then when they really realize, oh, it's irreversible. I just have to live with it because I'm not going to have my first child at 63. It's just not going to happen. I'm not going to meet someone who's going to want that. It's not going to, it's over.
Yeah, but also it's just hard to find companionship. Because I feel like you keep mentioning, like, inadvertently, like, the kid thing. I think a lot of people might not want kids. But I would say wanting companionship is a lot more universal.
Well, even then,
like,
you know, you might end up...
Exactly,
Are you going to be with someone who doesn't... Are you now at 65 going to date someone who doesn't have that stuff with them? Like, oh, maybe they have a 12-year-old.
It might be the only way to avoid having kids is to find someone.
Well, you've taken out all those options. Yeah. You could have had those conversations with someone you actually cared about and met someone who was on your mindset.
Yeah.
Now... Like I said, now you got to deal with this person's ex-wife and their kids, and now you're raising someone else, and you were like, well, you know. So, yeah, you took those options out because you just punted all of it. And now you got to deal with, the world goes on without you. That's the thing people don't realize. And that's, you know, the health, people are just going to keep on living, and they're going to forget you. And then you're going to have to just pick up whatever scraps are left. You know, so again, I'm not saying tomorrow you have to change your mindset 100%, but it's just like your health, just like your career, just like you. And I tell you a bunch of times, just out of just not even the love topic, like if you just the world just goes, and if you just go with the flow, I tell you that's gonna end up. You know, you're gonna end up in the rock somewhere. You know, spiraling out of control. So I think control of your love life.
Though I think what you're saying is really scary, right? It's like, damn, there's some crazy stuff to think about, and I think some people that do want to date are already there, and I think there's like a difference between what you're saying and what people should be maybe like carrying day to day. That's like a big picture idea for when you're sitting down and maybe reflecting on how you want to go about, even just thinking at small scale. The next year, what does the next year of your life look like romantically? And what do you want?
That's good. Yeah, what's the next?
And maybe that does involve thinking about 74-year-old you. But what you want to be careful of is, not being just like, oh, I'm single, I want to find someone because I don't want to die when I'm 74.
Yeah.
And I think
take it easy.
It's so natural to go there, and it sounds stupid, but I mean, I think to your point, I mean, it's kind of very real. So it's like, it is there, and it is technically possible, which is an awkward thought, right? I mean, we don't know what... There's no guarantees in life, is what our dad, always says. There's no guarantees in life, which is also very dark. We have a lot of darkness.
I could be single before this episode released.
It doesn't really matter, it really doesn't, and I think it's part of the mindset thing. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, what you do, from, all the stuff.
What you did.
You could find your
next...
Yes, as long as you love me. Yeah, your next date could be the love of your life, or you can go on 82 dates and none of them pan out to who you marry or whatever, who you settle down with if you don't want to do marriage, etc. And you just have to know that that's just how it is, and just be okay with it and trust the process and do the process. And that's something we talked about a lot, like in our New Year's content and all of that, and even earlier, it's like, even though, like, the outcome is scary, like, the idea of, like, maybe dying alone or the pressure of, like, all this stuff, like, you kind of just have to think of, like, it on a smaller scale so that you don't, like, scare yourself into panicking or settling down with the wrong person, too, which also
it's
happens.
work. It's the work guarantees work. You wouldn't go to the gym once and say, well, I'm not buff. That was a waste of time. And
I think working out, though, is a
are-
lot more, like, I can train and run, like, a distance pretty much, but, like, I can't, go on a certain amount of dates and find love. Like, you don't know how long it will take.
I'm not gonna argue that one, but anyway, the point is,
I have the marathon this year, so everyone's like, you can't run the marathon, haha, lol.
Yes.
But even, like, okay, let's say, I could train to run you can go couch to 5K, and there's, like, that's a little bit more, eventually that will happen.
But you
With
just
being
have
a single,
to
you just never know.
But you just have to, but again, the focus has to be the same.
Yes.
The you're not supposed to worry about, even though I was scaring you with the angle, you're not supposed to worry about it in both scenarios. When you're training, it shouldn't matter. If I told you, hey, guess what? I went back in time and you didn't finish the marathon. I mean, obviously that would scare you.
I just think
wait, let me talk. Obviously that would scare you because you were like, oh, like, then what did I do wrong? But you have to just be focused on the work. And the work for working out is following your regimen and staying true to the form. And the part of dating has to be that you are have the best intentions. You're doing it the way that you feel is the best way, and you're actually trying, because your partner could divorce you, break up with you, die. That's not up to you, but you can live with peace if you're like, you know what, I'm doing everything that I feel is the right thing in my heart, so I'm at peace with it. And you can do the same thing in your working out, in your career, in your love life. That's all you could do. The result, you don't know, because like I said, Megan can come in today and just say, hey, it's over, and that's it.
I think
that's
career is a lot better of a metaphor. You know me, I'm a stickler for when the metaphors don't line up. Because working out, I think it's a lot more, I mean, you still have to be process-driven in everything you do. But after a while, I can lift more and more or something, just given the time if I do the work. With dating, it's a lot less guaranteed. But with dating, it's a lot less guaranteed. I think the career example is a lot more apt because there's more factors there. There's more variables, and dating has a lot of variables just like a career would. So that's just like a stickler thing for me. I don't like when stuff doesn't line up.
It does line up.
Completely.
You just gotta listen a little bit.
No, I was listening, and it doesn't. So
if you think I was right, comment below.
Yeah.
If you think Janet was right, don't say.
I think working out is you're a lot more guaranteed to be fit if you work out all the time than you can go on like a bunch of dates and just not find anyone.
I'll give you that because the working out's still 1-to-1.
Thank you. That's what
But
that's
it
all I
still
was saying.
works.
That's all I was saying. That's all I was saying.
They both work. Just one works maybe a little better.
But I think that's too, what people have to, you kind of just have to accept that, in terms of like your mindset and your view on it, and be cool with that and not take it personally. I think that's the other big problem with it. Another thing with like, I'd say people's mindset on dating, I think a lot of times people, I feel like, have kind of going back to that whole like, oh, if someone comes along, then yeah, why not? I'm not opposed to falling in love. I think a lot of times people don't want to admit that they want a relationship and that they want love, and I was like this too. I think it's especially, I think it affects all like people of all different genders, but I feel like for me as a woman, like speaking from my experience as a woman, like I think it's especially hard in like the modern era, especially, which is really good. Because it's all about like empowerment and being independent, but I think in some ways it does feel kind of like, oh, especially as like a straight woman or whatever, it's like, oh, you want like a man, like all that, like, oh, you're all like this and that, but then today you just want like, the wedding and the white dress and all that shit, And I think it's kind of like, there's some cringe and cheese to love in some ways, so people don't want to like kind of own that, like, oh yeah, when I watch that romantic movie, like I want that to be my life, because it just sounds so stupid, and I think people get kind of embarrassed by it, and it's hard to say like, you know what, no, I do want that, like I want love in my life, and own that. And I think until you own that either privately or like somewhat outwardly with people, it's going to be harder for you to date, because you don't want to admit that you want it, because if you say like, for me, if I'm like, oh, I want a boyfriend, and I go like 3 years and I don't have a boyfriend, it's like, ooh, you can't get a boyfriend. Like, wow, no one wants you. Oh my God. All those first dates, no second date. You just kind of, either that's, whether that voice is external, I don't know what kind of assholes you roll with that are going to be that mean to you, or internal or whatever. I think that's something people struggle with. And it took me a while to own that I wanted a relationship. And until I actually owned up to the fact that I wanted a relationship, I wasn't able to realize for myself that like, oh, damn, I'm not doing anything to be in a relationship. Like, I need to get my shit together. So I feel like that needs to come first before you can even start to find love.
It's funny, but now that I think about it, I've been in a lot of, even though you might have heard, oh, well, he's been with the same person for 10 years, but I don't think Maggie will listen to this podcast. But the people before her, I also dated for a good amount of time, like 6 months here, a year here. So, and pretty much everyone I've dated, who I dated for that long, which is like 3 to 4 people, including the person now, at one point, especially kind of early, I could tell I think people are also scared of love, to be honest. They fear picking the wrong person. They fear, oh, I'm locked in. Like, so this could be forever. Like, it scares people out. Because I've seen it with everyone I've dated. At one point, they were like, and I already know what's going to happen, so I don't even care about that stuff. So they'd be like, oh, well, I don't know, like, I'm still young, and I don't know, and just granted, some of them I was 18, 19, 20, right? But I was always like, oh, this will be like, I know that stuff goes away once I keep showing who I am and stuff, so it'll be fine. And it was until, obviously, for a few of those, it didn't work, or we ended, but not because of not because of those
like,
reasons.
I still see Sarah every now and then.
Not because of the reason they were talking about. I just ended up, it just didn't work out. It just didn't work out. But even with Maggie, that she kind of mentioned that in the beginning, and she was like, oh, I don't know, because I'm young, and da-da-da. She wasn't, like, being janky or anything, but she was, like, honestly had some reservations about just being, like, long term and stuff like that. But I already knew, I'm like, hey, we get along well, it's fine. So it's not anything to really worry about. And I think another thing, people with the mindset, they kind of get scared of the commitment because, again, a lot of y'all, y'all don't have any, in my opinion, I told Janet before, I'm like, honestly, to really talk about what a relationship is, you might have some single experience, but actual, like, love experience, to me, you can't even be in the conversation if you haven't had at least 6 months, and really a year. For me, it's like, you don't have anything. I couldn't learn anything from you. 0. Because I've done 10 years, so 6 months, there's nothing you could teach me, unless you were in a very specific scenario, like, you deeply loved them, and they were in a tragic accident, and now my person's in a tragic accident, maybe then, but other than that, you got nothing to tell me. And because of that little data, people get really scared about this stuff, even when they are in it. They're like, oh, you're in it now? Oh, crap, this is like, this is heavy. So I think that's another thing with the mindset, even going into it, you gotta be like, you have to kind of get rid of that fear a little bit and say, hey, because how many of you listening to this podcast, honestly, when's the last time you were in a 2-year relationship? A lot of people struggle with that. You're being one of them, right? Like, it's been a while.
I've never been in a 2-year relationship.
Exactly, right? And I think that's actually pretty normal. It's long. 2 years is a long time, even, especially we're talking with people who are in their 20s. That would mean for it to be 2 years, do the math. Is that even really been possible recently, So getting into those things, I didn't have too much fear, but I know a lot of people who I've dated and who I've known, even when they were in it, they're like, I don't know, man. I'm moving in with her.
Fear too, so check that out.
Yeah, definitely.
Fear.
So you have to kind of, part of the mindset's being like prepared, and then, what do I always say? I say there's 2 tragedies in life: not getting what you want and getting it, right? And for some people, when they actually get in a relationship and it's real, now they're like, whoa, the cold feet. They're like, oh man,
she get cold feet.
Did you hear how she chews her chips?
Well,
we're officially dating, and a week later they ghost on them. It's like it's like you're a mess, bro. Like you keep saying the right things, but then your actions, because it's that part of that's the immaturity, part of that's the fear. And I'm not saying you're gonna be that extreme where you're like, man, I told her let's be serious, and the next week I'm like, I gotta go, and it's like, but some of those fears, what's always the trope? I haven't been married, but every sitcom does at the end, you've been dating them for so many years, you propose, they say I do the day of, they're just like ready to jump out the window, right? Because there's that fear of, oh, can I actually pull through this? And some of that, that comes with maturity, and like I said, since you've never done it, it's hard to kind of simulate what that fear is like. Oh, I'm moving in with them. Like, today we're moving in together. Like, this is crazy. Like, so there's like levels to that.
Did you feel that way when you moved in with Megan?
Honestly, no. For me, I was
Did you feel that way?
I don't think so. I felt like I was just, the only thing that made me nervous.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, the only thing that made me nervous, just because I didn't feel fear, doesn't mean I didn't go through the same process as things. I also moved in, did all that stuff. The thing I had with Maggie was, I was a little nervous that maybe it wouldn't work out, because I knew that if it did, we're probably staying together. Like, we're going for broke, basically, It's like going for it on fourth down.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying, because if you guys, like, if living together doesn't work, then you're broken out.
Yeah, we're going to really test it now. Now we're really going to test it. Okay, we've been dating for 2-3 years. Now we're going to move in. This is it. If this doesn't work, then we're done. And if, so it's really kind of like you definitely doubling up. It's like, all right, for the wedge, Here's the question. So again, part of the mindset is, you have to be okay with where you're at. Understand what you want, and also, if you're lucky enough to be in the process of actually getting it, not starting to just out of your ass, just start running away and screaming.
I think
that's
also
part of
like
it
the
too.
very last bit, and we're talking more about being single than being in a relationship. So I don't want to be too relationship-y, but something that I like didn't really like learn or like internalize until recently was like what it really means to be in a relationship. Even though I haven't really been in like a long thing for a while, like something long term, but. I really like. I was talking to Edwin once, which I also recommend like talking to if you are lucky enough to know someone in a relationship that isn't like twisted
80 or 80.
Yeah,
because the old age does matter sometimes.
yeah, exactly. You know, if you know someone like that, I would recommend just talking to them about the relationship. I talked to
like
Edwin
a
and Maggie.
newlywed person.
I talk to Edwin and Maggie about the relationship all the time just to pick their brain for things. And obviously some things I don't agree with and some things I do or whatever. But like it's just interesting to hear from them because they've like been through dating. And one of the things Edwin mentioned to me a few years ago, maybe it wasn't even that long ago, was like that, people think about going in a relationship and they think about it in such a selfish way. They're just like, oh, I want someone who likes what I like and who supports me and who's there for me and who makes me feel loved. And you should have someone that does those things. I'm not saying that you shouldn't.
They're all me.
Yes,
me,
exactly.
me.
And I never realized that in my mind, that is what I want. Because that's what you think of. I don't know. It's what
you're selfish.
Yeah. Well, inherently, when you think about romance, you don't think about what you do for the person.
It's funny, you're thinking about the love of your life, but they're not in the story. You're just thinking about what they'll be for you,
Yeah. So I realized, Edwin said that, and I realized, I'm like, I kind of think of it that way. And I don't think I was ever, I honestly don't have any regrets from how I've acted in my relationships personally. Not really. But just for like thinking about the idea of it, it really helps me to kind of realize that because it kind of made it more real to me and less of like, I don't know. It made it. I guess it added a layer of humanity to everything. Like at the end of the day, everyone that you want to go on a date with is just looking for a partner to some degree. Hopefully you're out with someone that claims to want what you want. Obviously if you don't really want a relationship and just want to hook up with someone, hopefully you're not with someone that wants to get married.
Well, then you don't need the single survivor
exactly,
like that right now.
Exactly right.
You're too immature for it.
But or that like if you want to be in a relationship, hopefully you're not with some like douche bro or some stupid girl. Yeah, douchette. That sounds gross. But yeah, and everyone's trying to do that, and and not everyone's gonna be compatible for everyone. And I think kind of realizing that so much more reciprocal helps, mindset wise deal with I guess what we're gonna get into next, which is kind of like the approaches and the actions to it, helps deal with the dating part of it, because everyone's just out there trying to find someone. And if you believe in the idea of like a lifelong partner or a long-term partner or marriage, there's only like hopefully just it'll happen that one time, right? You'll get married and it'll just be done. So the odds of like, it's the person across from you that's eating the chips that you guys got. Like, I mean, honestly, the odds are not, they're just like random, like you don't know. So it's not really that personal.
All right. So how about the approach? So I heard you guys talking. I'm not all crazy about all that stuff. I'm good. I'm out there. I'm on Bumble. I'm on the apps or I've heard of these apps. Like I'm ready. Mm-hmm. What's next? I feel I'm ready.
Can you give me another beer?
We'll be back after these short messages.
About like the action plan or whatever. As far as apps, I actually think a lot of people are very negative on apps and don't use apps or have them, like don't have accounts or have apps on their phones but don't use them because they fucking sucked. I hated them. So a quick thing on the app stuff and online dating. I think you absolutely 180% need to be on online dating if you're interested in dating completely. I think the only person that I would be okay with not is if you literally have gone on like several dates, you go on dates regularly, and you just meet people in real life. If that really is you, then I guess
let's say this.
That's okay.
Let's put a standard for them. You have to ask one person out a month that isn't someone you know. Now that sounds ridiculous, and get on the app.
Yeah.
So if you go to the bar and you're like every other Thursday I go, and if I try to look for someone and I say hi, or if I see someone on the street, I will approach them. If I see them like, I'm at the grocery store and it doesn't seem creepy, I'm going to say, hey, hi, whatever, can you pass the rutabagas or something? If you do that, cool. And the odds of that being you?
It's probably not.
Probably none. So if you haven't done that 12 times in 12 different months, then you gotta be on the app, because I know what you're gonna say. Well, that's crazy. Exactly. So then, if that seems too much, then get on the app.
Exactly. And for me, when I first decided,
it's like the gym working out at home thing. Okay, fine, but how many? You better start working out at home.
If I
hear about it.
When I decided I wanted to actually date, because I was like, I want a relationship, so I probably need a date. because that's how that happens. I was really like negative on apps like in college. Obviously, you don't really need them as much in college because you're like in college. Yeah, I don't know. You know a lot of people, so it's not really.
Yeah, you got that boy in your math class.
Yeah, you got that boy in your math class or your science class or whatever the fuck. Anyway, I was really negative on it for a lot of reasons. I just felt like it was a loser thing to do. I felt like this is the bottom of the barrel. Like, you gave up, you're desperate, and now you're just showing your photo to strangers. That's what I kind of felt like it was. And I was very open about that opinion. And then I realized it was kind of stupid because, kind of like what Edwin said, I was like, well, I don't really go outside. When would anyone meet me? I'm not even doing it. I was very. Everyone feels busy, but I obviously felt busy. So I was like, you know what? I just need to get these apps. And then I finally did, and I got a couple of them. I got Tinder. I got Bumble. I think those are the ones I got off the bat. Since then, I also have Coffee Meets Bagel, Hinge, and OkCupid. So I have like all of them basically now. Yeah, and the almost ironic thing is, like, once I started online dating, I actually did meet someone in real life, like while I was at work. So that was kind of weird because it was, the last guy I went out with for a longer period of time. Like, I met him at my job. I didn't meet him on
your school work job?
When I worked in Muitong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, good, gotcha.
So if you listen to this in Chicago, I did once work in Muitong. Yeah, so...
I don't think we've drank a Moody Tongue beer on this podcast, which is weird, because you've mentioned it so many times.
Yeah.
You mention it every time that, like, I worked at Moody Tongue, so I can talk about what a stout is. But we haven't actually drank a Moody Tongue beer.
We should.
So it's weird.
Anyway, so...
Maybe
yeah,
next
do
podcast.
that. You need to be doing that. And I guess I could go into this.
Yeah, and if you don't agree about the app thing, rewind this and get back to the mindset. Because clearly you weren't ready once I told you the approach.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go into specifics on, like, app-specific things, but are there other things we want to address in terms of the approach? Because I don't want to spend, like, the whole time just being like...
I think you have to...
but I can. I just want to see this.
Approach and mindset do kind of go hand in hand, because, again, just like I said, if you have a bad approach, then your mindset's broken.
Oh.
So... I would say let's I can kind of talk more about the date thing, because obviously personally I haven't had experience on the apps. They weren't around when I was around, so I can't really tell you like what the UI looks like or what it works like. I don't know any of that stuff, so I can't help with that. That's what I mean, right? Obviously I'm not the person to talk to about how do I get better dates on Bumble. I wouldn't know. I'd have to look at it and think about it and stuff. And use it.
I'll do some details on that at the end.
So
it's not really that.
No,
big
it's fine.
Of a deal.
Yeah, so you can take care of that. But what I can take care of is like let's say the day to date thing. Day to date. So I think part of the approach is you have to approach it with optimism, but just, just be realistic. It's going to be okay. It doesn't have to, don't hyperanalyze everything. Don't worry if it's not perfect or if it's even bad. You just have to be kind of like the workout. You just have to be happy that, hey, I'm out there. I'm doing stuff.
I think also go ahead.
I'm out there. I'm trying it. I'm doing it. And we're just going to take it in stride. And if it's a great date, awesome. If it's an awkward one, whatever, because I've seen so many people, they've had like 2 or 3 bad experiences, and they just they talk about them for like a year. They're like, I went out, and I'm like, yeah, I've heard this story a couple times.
They're usually not even that bad.
And I don't even, they're like, oh, like he was weird, like he wanted to split the fries, and I was like, that was kind of cheap. And then that was the only like negative thing. And granted, that might be cheap, but it's like, why is that? You told me this story 2 times, and I've known you for 3 years, and I've only talked to you 5 times. It's kind of weird. You don't have any other stories, and the reason you have no other experience is because your ass ain't going out there. Yeah. So it's about you can't let a couple good people, spoil you from looking at anyone else. It's kind of the opposite too. Just whether the thing is, whether the result is what you wanted on that specific date, you can't let that be the penultimate. That's what they all would be like, or whatever. You have to just say, okay, well, this is part of it. Ups and downs come with it, right? Like, what do I always say about, like, my work and being a professional? Not that you're a professional of love, but, I mentioned that you gotta, when I talk about, my piano playing here, I say that I have to love this even when it doesn't love me back. And sometimes your workout doesn't love you back. Sometimes your date doesn't love you back. Like sometimes things, when you're pursuing great things in life, there's gonna be pushback. It ain't gonna be like, hey, I want to run the marathon, and I just ran it, and it was great. No, that's not how the narrative will be. If you want to be a professional musician, it's not just going to be, oh, I just jammed and made great songs, and it was awesome. And dating's going to be the same thing. It's not going to be, oh, okay, I'm ready. Hey, I'm meeting all these wonderful people. I feel so much love in my life. This is so fulfilling. That's not what it'll be. Hopefully, that's what it will be at some point down the road, but it's just not realistic to expect the good things of the idea you have, immediately. And too many times, just in general in life, people just expect that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just weird because it's just not realistic. You can't just say you want to do those things and they just happen. Struggle and pain comes through that. And I mean, love, I mean, that's what half the songs are about, the pain of it, you know, because everyone relates to it. It's like, oh yeah, man, I know exactly what you're talking about, you know.
It's awful.
Yeah, so it's part of it. So you have to, I'm not saying you have to enjoy it or be looking forward to it, but you have to kind of embrace that this is part of it, you know. You can't take the marriage and the lovely part and not think, hey, there's gonna be some worse than that. And they're kind of beautiful for that reason. You gotta kind of embrace, like, hey,
No.
I went on my first bad date, like, you know, I survived and I'm gonna go on another date. Like, this is part of it.
Actually, I disagree with the very end of that part. I think you should be excited and looking forward to it.
Well, I mean, I understand if you're not, but, like, you know, it's part of it. You have to understand, like, approach it and embrace.
Well, I think that's part of the approaching it and embracing it.
I'm saying you gotta be excited that you had a bad day, but, you know, understand it's gonna happen and, you know, don't let it get to you.
A bad date's a different thing, but I think, you know, when the prospect of going on a date, it can be scary and all this other stuff and intimidating and stressful. But at the end of the day, you should look, you know, you got, like what you mentioned at the start of what you were talking about. That's what I was going to jump in, but I would also want to hear you finish out what was left of your thought on it. But be optimistic. You know, put on an outfit that you feel like you look really good in, or that you really like. You know, spend time getting ready. Like, make it a nice time. Like, it doesn't have to be this chore of a thing, or this, oh my god, yeah, I'm going out with Stacy tonight, but it's all right. No, it's not gonna work. It's like, you know, it's like, hey, either way, you're probably doing something that you like, right, to some degree, even if it's something basic that everyone likes, like getting a drink or having dinner or something, or going to a movie. Like,
I like dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
it's like, you know, I mean, you're out for the night. You know, you're relaxing, you're doing something social. It is have that quote unquote stress of like, oh, it's a stranger. It's not like it's this chill hang out with a friend or a family member. But you know, I always look forward to my dates. I think, you know, it's fun. You get to know someone. Like, you know, kind of think of what the positive things are about it. For that single night, not so much like, even though it's kind of awkward because you are there like looking for love or whatever, but like, before you're looking for love, you're kind of just figuring out what you're going to order and wanting to get to know this person. So like, just kind of focus on getting to know them. Like, your job is to get to know them, and that's kind of it. It's not like they need to be like the love of your life necessarily or anything like that. I mean, that's part of it, but it's not what you need to be focused on in that exact instant necessarily. And I think too often, like, people think about like, oh my god, I'm going on a date and I'm trying to find someone and I've been alone for so long. And when you go into a date with that mindset, it comes off on the date, and then it's a cycle of like, you know, maybe that's why you could be struggling getting dates. I'm not going to start to just guess on why you might be having a hard time dating. But I mean, I see those things play out because I've talked to people, and I can tell when, they'll mention it to you. And you know, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's
you shouldn't mention it.
No, you shouldn't mention it.
You shouldn't
mention it, you know? So, like, I can tell when people are like, you know, they just blurt out, like, I haven't been on a date in so long. You know, be confident, enjoy being out, and don't worry so much about, you know, oh my god, I need to love this person, or this person needs to fall in love with me. Just eat your salad and try to get to know them and have a good time.
We're not going to necessarily go into the do's and don'ts of dating, but yes, that's definitely like, I don't need to know that you haven't kissed a girl in 3 years. Keep that to yourself. I don't need to know that last night you kissed someone. Like, leave that. Be neutral. I'm not saying hide who you are. It's fine, but that's the kind of stuff you're like, honestly, it's
but when you go in a little bit too, like, you know, when you go in too stressy, it's gonna come off.
Isn't this weird? It's kind of weird, right? It's like, what are you talking? Why you're making it weird right now, right? It's like we're on a date now. Like, this is what everyone's always talking about, and like we're doing it now, and it's like, what?
Yeah. Stuff like that. Yeah. So
it's like you need to chill out.
You want to go in positive because people like positivity. If you're with someone that doesn't like positivity, don't see them again.
Sounds like
don't see them again. It wasn't a good date.
So don't do that. Don't mention. Try not to mention exes. Definitely. I don't need to hear about the person you loved before. It doesn't help me at all. Again, I don't want to go into all the do's and don'ts. Yeah. And then people are going to get offended because they're like, oh, I do that. I'm like, well, that's why, you know, you're listening to the podcast.
But are there things with approaches? Because once again, I want to save the I want to save the practical app stuff for like later, you know?
But yeah, I mean, I think
that's kind of I think that's the main thing.
I think everything except now just, we talked a little bit about the first couple of dates. We talked about mindset, approach. Yeah, just get into the apps. What do they work like? How to get verified on there? You know?
Yeah, I guess the very last comment I want to make before talking about app-specific things is to kind of highlight something you said, but I want to make sure that everyone, like, heard it and noticed it. Because something I talked to you about a few days ago. But yeah, like you don't want to let a bad date, or just say mediocre, because honestly, a lot of dates aren't bad. They're just like, I don't know, I didn't like him, or I didn't like her, or I didn't like them, or whatever. And after a while, that can feel kind of shitty, to be honest, because you kind of start to feel like, wow, maybe I just am not incapable of love. That's kind of extreme, but you kind of feel that way a little bit, because you're like, I just don't feel anything for these people. How do I find, and that can be, that concern can pop into your head. Like, especially after a few dates where you're like, I don't want a second date with this person. I don't like them. And wait, where was I going with that? I'm trying to make sure. So as far as it's more like a frequency thing, right? So that's what I wanted to mention. Just like you said, how like a bad date shouldn't stop you from going out, and a good date shouldn't like make you locked into someone. With mediocre dates as well, like you just want a lot of dates, and that's it. Even if you meet someone that you do like, because at the end of the day, you don't know if they like you back in that way, or when it's very, very early, like a few 3, 4, 5 dates in, you just don't know what's up. And just keep going out on dates until you get solidified with someone, regardless of the experience. Because, like you said, it's so random. You just don't know what's going to happen. So, yeah, just because he wants to split the fries, and I guess you don't like splitting fries, like, that doesn't mean that, Bumble is garbage. So then that'll be my lead into the app stuff. So, a thing I hear a lot about with apps, it's kind of like they get blamed for dating, basically. Like, people will go on a date, and that doesn't work out. Maybe it is a bad date.
Facebook isn't trash.
They're like, they're like, oh man, like Tinder's trash. I went out on a date with this one guy and he was terrible. So yeah, the apps aren't terrible. Like dating's just hard and kind of, it's a rough time, and it involves like a lot of stuff. So as far as like apps, I recommend downloading pretty much all of them and messing around with them and seeing which one you like more. Like I said, I use Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, Coffee Meets Bagel, and OkCupid. And yeah, just seeing which one you gravitate towards more. I try to use all of them, but to be honest, it can be overwhelming because that's like 6 applications. That could be a lot of notifications. It's a lot of stuff. You gotta make all those profiles. You have to try to like use them, or else it's a waste. It's like Monday. It's just a lot of stuff going on. So
what would you tell someone who hasn't done any of that?
I would say start with one that you feel comfortable with. So
how would I know that if I've never used them?
So a lot of people automatically are like, I don't want to use Tinder. It's the hookup app. If you feel that way, if it's that serious for you, I mean, maybe don't start with that one because you already kind of have a negative mindset. But also, you should just kind of change your mindset.
Well, then again, rewind the approach.
Yes,
not good.
But
there are other ones. So
I mean, I would honestly, I'll recommend mine, and then obviously I would, if I was you listening, I would also maybe ask friends that you trust and that maybe are already doing this stuff, and they might be able to speak to that. But also be careful because they have their own biases, of course. For me, when I first started dating, I started with Tinder because that was the most popular app. It's the only one I knew. And Bumble because it was supposed to be like the anti-Tinder or whatever. Because it's like, the women have to message the men first. So it's less like, I don't know, stereotypical or whatever.
Right. Well, I think both people kind of hate, it's kind of weird, like the dating thing. I haven't met many guys who like the fact they have to talk to girls. Mm-hmm. And I don't like many girls who like the fact they get approached by guys. So flipping it's kind of good because at least then it's like, well, show me, motherfucker.
Yeah, kind of like
Go
that.
up to him, bitch.
Though it's totally heteronormative, though. So sorry if for anyone that's queer listening and is like it's so gendered just because.
Well, maybe you don't know what the kind of queer friendly apps are.
Look at that too. That's a good thing to point out. Yeah, if you're queer, look into like queer friendly apps. I mean, you can definitely use these apps, and queer people do. But I know sometimes queer people like stuff that's more geared towards like their community or whatever. Or maybe look at like what does like a lesbian woman think of these apps specifically. Right. That might be good.
Well, hopefully, if you are queer, you have queer friends who can kind of point you in that direction.
That too.
Don't have.
But I think these apps also, I mean, they work for any community. But I'm saying like Bumble, where it's trying to like flip the gender norm. It's like, well, I mean, I'm a woman seeing a woman.
One type of gender norm, so that's the.
It's like exactly. So anyway, I would start with like maybe those because they're the most popular ones. They have the most users on them. So
Bumble and
Tinder is what I started with. But honestly, I actually really love Hinge. I would recommend starting with Hinge. But it also depends. It might depend on city and stuff too. Like my friend in Portland/Seattle, wherever. He's like, I used Hinge, and it's like all white women. Like there's so many white women on here.
Well, it's Portland.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a whiter place, and I don't know. Stuff like that. Like you never really know what you're going to be getting. With like the types of
your
people.
Your friend doesn't date white women?
He doesn't really like dating white women that much, no. Anyway, but that's like a tangent.
Right.
For me, the thing I like about Hinge is that it's you have your pictures and you have like these little questions you can answer. So to me, it's a nice looking UI and it feels like a nice mix of photos and actual content on your personality. And the way it's set up, like you have to look at both. A lot of apps, it's very easy to just look at pictures, or OkCupid, it's like a whole novel on you. So I like Hinge because it's very streamlined. I also like that you can like a specific thing from someone. So I can like a photo of you, or I can like a thing you said, and then I can like add a comment there. And then I also like that the app pushes pushes people in general to set up a date, because they leave the notification on your phone if you don't reply to the person you're talking to.
Nice.
And after a little bit, the app will like have a little notification pop up and say like, hey, you and Jacob have been talking for a while. Do you want to ask him out, or do you want to ask her out, or ask them out? And which some people find a little bit aggressive, but that actually is like, I went out with this one guy.
Well, you know, you gotta either.
I went out with this one guy, and he was like, well, the app had mentioned that like I hadn't asked you out, so I tried to. He asked me out kind of in an awkward way, and I like called him out for it. But like he asked me out because he's like, well,
the app told me to.
Yeah, the app told me to. But I mean, he did like me, and we had a good time together. We went on a couple dates.
What's the old saying? Either piss or get off the pot.
Exactly.
Don't be over here.
That's a big problem with a lot of people on apps. They talk to people forever, trying to make sure like, oh, I want to make sure Sarah is actually
Well, if these guys knew how to close, it wouldn't be.
Well, the thing is, like, don't try to make sure Sarah is the woman you want to spend your life with. Just, is Sarah, like, do you think she's an attractive looking person?
Even if you want to find out, there's only one way to actually do that. You know,
but like some people are trying to find out before they go on the date. You know, they're like, I don't want to waste my time on a date.
It's like the 40-year virgin guy who spends so much time trying to prepare that egg salad, and then in the end, he should just bought an egg salad for $10 and end it, right? And be like, I got my egg salad. Instead, they're like, I want to see before I ask her out. Does she like anime? Like, just ask her out, and then it'll just go, right?
Actually, I think people think they're saving time.
You know what? Planning would be a good one, because for our podcast in general, because I love planning. I'm real pro planning. We talk about the economy, but some people just over plan, and they're like, I planned out everything I'm gonna do, and I did none of it. And it's like, why don't you just go? Sometimes you just gotta just go.
The apps are
date, man.
The apps are used to get the date. They are not dating. I think people confuse that.
They're
like, I'm talking to
someone.
this guy. And like, it's okay. Like, I'm not saying that you can't have that conversation. I messaged friends plenty of times to, with screenshots of things and being like, oh yeah, like, I'm trying to go out with this person. We'll see. And I'm not saying you gotta ask them out as soon as you message them. But it's not dating. And don't confuse it with like the start of dating, because it's just a text. Like, to me, texts are only like meaningful when I've met you in real life, and I don't even text like people that I'm about to go out with very much at all. And don't think, regardless of gender, don't think it's weird to ask someone out like almost immediately, because it really isn't. Like, I've had that's something I like about. So that's another thing you might want to check out for the apps, like Coffee Meets Bagel, for instance. They are very aggressive with like, you're talking to this person, or you're just not gonna see him again. Like, they have like timers on their thing, like where it's like the chat's only open for a certain amount of time, and then you can renew it, and it doesn't like cost you anything or anything, because all these apps have paid versions and stuff. But like, they really push you to be like, go on this date. Like, this is just like, get out of here. Let's keep it moving. So,
well, that's the only way the coffee that meets the bagel,
Yeah. So depending on the kind of person you
coffee
are,
talks to bagel for 3 months.
You might like
never
that.
meets them.
Because you might feel, it gives you more urgency. You might feel like the people on the app have more urgency. So, and I had like a guy ask me out, honestly, because of the app. He was like, hey, we were messaged a few times. It was like 2 years ago or something. And he was like, this chat's expiring soon. So like, hey, here's my phone number, or like, hey, do you want to go out or whatever? And like, then that was a way for us to kind of continue contact. I think also too, like set up a date quickly. If you like to not use the app that much, just saying like, hey, I'd rather talk like over text. Can I have your phone number? I've always said yes to that, to be honest. Like, I don't know how some people might be like, I don't know. But the thing is, if they don't want you, then they don't want you. It's like, you can't, don't think that just because someone says no, that means you should never be forward with someone or direct with someone. So make sure you don't confuse the dating app itself for the act of dating.
It's not like, dating. Dating is going on a date.
It's just a way to get a date. Because, like, I've known a lot of people that are like, oh, I've been talking to Adam, and for like 4 or 5 weeks. Also, kind of it's kind of general dating advice. know your non-negotiables, but also know the consequences of your non-negotiables. So, for instance, like, especially as, like, a woman, I know a lot of women who are, like, who date men, and they don't want to ask men out. And if you don't want to ask men out, I'm not going to say you need to ask men out, because it's whatever you're comfortable with, but just know that if that's your, like, rule in your head, well, you're probably going to decrease the amount of dates you can get because you're not willing to ask a guy out, because sometimes guys drag ass to ask someone out, because that can happen to anyone. It's not like a gender thing. So so just make sure that you know that. And if you're like, you know what, I don't care because I just really don't believe.
Well, maybe you should be on one of those apps that the guys have to answer and there's a time and
just think about that.
For those, you need to go out more, so you need to figure out what's the best way for you to do that. If it's like, hey, once I get on the apps, I'm gonna just be on it.
Always decide
cool.
like what hill you're gonna die on. Yeah, I think too. That's a good point. Like, have a game plan for the app. So for me, because it can be a lot of like work.
Because then especially as a woman, maybe you're kind of having your kicking in too. Because then you're gonna be like, I am doing it. It's like, yeah, but you're like, oh, I'm gonna do it, but I'm not gonna go out with anyone who asks me too soon. I'm not gonna ask anyone out. Then you start to become like, wait, are you actually doing it, or are you just doing enough to say?
Well, that's why you have to think about your
on Bumble. Are you actually?
That's why you have to think about like the consequences of your mindset and your actions,
right.
And just know that like maybe that's why you're not
with someone. Yeah, because you're not. Yeah, exactly. If you're not going on a lot of dates, a decent amount of dates, good amount of dates, you're not active. Then you're not really active. It's not enough to be on Bumble. It's not enough to talk to someone. It's not even enough to go on one date. You need to be actively working on it and doing those things, and that's how you're gonna survive the single life.
Yeah. I know we're about to close out, but I'm trying to think if there's other really big key things that I've noticed with apps. I feel like there might be, but I don't know if I'm gonna remember them offhand. So yeah, lightning round recap. Get all the apps that you can think of. Oh, I think what I was gonna say was the game plan thing. So it can be a lot of time talking to all these people and trying to set up stuff. It's annoying. It's annoying. It's an annoying process. So you have to figure out what works for you. For me, I like to just tentpole it to something else. So maybe like if you're someone that always watches some TV when you get home from work or before you go to bed, especially if it's like maybe like for me, I rewatch a lot of shows. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna rewatch, Friends, and I'm gonna do that 20 minutes. You're the reason they make $2 billion a year. Yes. And during that 20 minutes, I'm gonna like go through all of like my apps and get like a bunch of different people. And then for me, when I get matches, if they allow me to message them, depending on the app, it's different. Sometimes you need it reciprocal, sometimes you don't. Then I'll send that on like a separate day, or I'm like, okay, I'll look through my matches and I'll message some people if they haven't messaged me, stuff like that. Have like a game plan for it, because it can be very overwhelming because there's so much stuff there, because like especially if you have multiple apps, it can just become a lot. But I would say as much as possible, try to use at least like 2 or 3 apps, because I feel like every app might have like a different type of person on it. So you want to like try to diversify it a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of it offhand without like having, pre-planned or whatever. And I think that should be able to help you at least get started on using dating apps and talking to people. And even though, like I said, it's up to you how you want to go about it, your comfort level. But for my best advice to anyone, once again, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, be cool with messaging some people sometimes. Be cool with asking people out sometimes. Because honestly, if you're not, you're going to miss out, because you just never know who's on the other end that might have their own thing of they feel awkward, or they don't know if you like them, or they're like whatever. Like just, if you, at the end of the day, if you want to go out with someone, just see if they're free, whatever. You can even, like, if you're that much of like a punk about it, no offense to women who are like very adamant about asking out men, but I find it annoying personally. If you're that adamant about it, just, there's ways to hint at dates too, where like someone can pick up that you want to go out. So figure out something that will get you on dates. Maybe make a goal for how many dates you want to go on. Like for me, I want to go on at least 12 first dates in the year, which might sound like super low or super high, depending on who you are. I don't know who's listening and what your perspective is. But it's more first dates than I've gone on before, like in last year, because I have like a very busy life. And honestly, I don't prioritize it that much, but I do try to work on it a little bit, because I think it is important to find love in life. So yeah, that is our survival guide.
That's it.